During a relentless winter, a widowed millionaire is approached by a barefoot girl who begs him to buy a painting. With tears in her eyes, she reveals that the painting was made by her deceased mother and that she needs to feed her younger siblings. Curious, the man observes the work attentively until the signature in the corner paralyzes him completely. It was the name of the woman he had abandoned in the past, and who perhaps left more than just a memory behind. The bitter January wind cut through Manhattan's financial district like a knife, sending pedestrians scurrying for shelter. Ethan Bradley stood at his office window on the 42nd floor, watching tiny figures hurry along Wall Street below. At 35, he was at the pinnacle of success, founder and CEO of Bradley Capital Investments, with a net worth that placed him comfortably on Forbes' list of America's wealthiest individuals. Yet the sprawling New York skyline before him, once a source of ambition and pride, now seemed as empty as his penthouse apartment. 16 months had passed since Sarah's accident. 16 months of returning to an empty home, of sitting alone at the dining table they had chosen together, of sleeping on one side of a king-sized bed. The grief counselor had told him that time would help, but Ethan was beginning to doubt whether any amount of time could fill the void Sarah had left behind. "Mr. Bradley, your 4 o'clock cancelled, but Ms." Porter sent up the financial projections for the Westlake acquisition. His assistant's voice through the intercom pulled Ethan from his thoughts. "Thank you, Jessica. I'll review them before I leave." His voice was steady, professional, the same voice he used in board meetings and investor calls. Few of his employees knew how hollow he felt inside. Maintaining appearances had become second nature. Ethan spent the next 3 hours buried in spreadsheets and market analyses, working well past the time when most of his staff had departed. Work was his sanctuary now, the only place where purpose still existed. By the time he finally powered down his computer, darkness had fallen over the city, and fresh snow was beginning to accumulate on the streets below. The security guard nodded as Ethan crossed the marble lobby. "Nasty night, Mr. Bradley. Want me to call your driver?" "No thanks, Tom. I'll walk. Could use the fresh air." The guard raised his eyebrows but knew better than to argue. "Bundle up then, sir. Temperatures dropping fast." The first blast of winter air felt like a physical shock after the building's warmth. Ethan pulled his cashmere scarf tighter and started the 6-block walk to his penthouse. The sidewalks were nearly deserted now, most sensible New Yorkers having retreated indoors from the approaching storm. He was passing a narrow side street when he heard it, a small voice nearly lost in the wind. "Please, sir, would you like to buy my picture?" Ethan turned toward the sound. There, huddled against a building's recess, stood a small girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old, with dark hair falling in tangled waves around her thin face. She wore only a worn coat several sizes too large, and her feet, Ethan felt a jolt of shock. Her feet were protected from the snow by nothing more than flimsy canvas shoes. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, glancing around for an adult. "Where are your parents?" The girl held up what appeared to be a painting, her small hands trembling from cold. "I'm selling this. My mom painted it before she went to heaven. Please, I need money to buy food for my brother and sister." Ethan hesitated. Street scams weren't uncommon in New York, and he'd learned long ago to walk past the countless hands stretched out for money, but something about the girl's desperate expression made him pause. "It's just you and your siblings?" he asked, taking a step closer. She nodded, eyes wide and pleading. "Please buy it, it's all I have to sell." Against his better judgment, Ethan moved closer to examine the painting. It was a simple canvas showing a field of sunflowers turning their faces toward a brilliant sun. Despite its simplicity, there was something captivating about the technique, the way light seemed to emanate from within the painting itself. "How much are you asking for it?" he said, reaching for his wallet. "Whatever you can give me," the girl whispered, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. "We haven't eaten since yesterday." Ethan pulled out several $100 bills, far more than the painting would be worth under normal circumstances, and was about to hand them over when his eyes caught the signature in the bottom corner of the canvas. Olivia Martinez. His hand froze mid-air as the name hit him like a physical blow. Memories he'd buried years ago suddenly surged to the surface. A sun-filled studio apartment in Brooklyn, canvases stacked against the walls, the smell of oil paints and coffee, and Olivia. Brilliant, passionate Olivia, with a paintbrush in her hand and dreams in her eyes. "Your mother," he said, his voice suddenly hoarse. Was her name Olivia? The girl's eyes widened with surprise. Yes. Did you know my mommy? Ethan stared at the child, really seeing her for the first time. The high cheekbones, the slight dimple in her chin, the intelligent dark eyes. Features he recognized not just from Olivia, but from his own reflection. A cold that had nothing to do with the winter night spread through his chest, as he calculated backward through the years. What's your name? He asked, barely able to form the words. Sophia, she answered, clutching the painting tighter as if afraid he might change his mind. Sophia Martinez. And how old are you, Sophia? 5.5, she said, with the precision only children use for measuring their age. 5.5 years. Almost exactly the amount of time since he'd walked away from Olivia Martinez to pursue his career without distractions, as he'd so callously put it then. Before he'd met Sarah, before he'd built his company into an empire, before everything that now defined his life. Where do you live, Sophia? He asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. Where are your brother and sister? In our apartment, she said, pointing vaguely eastward. But please don't tell anyone we're alone. They'll take us away and separate us. Mommy made me promise to keep us together. Ethan knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with the child, with Olivia's child, possibly his child. I won't let anyone separate you, he said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. But it's too cold for you to be out here. I want to help you and your siblings. Will you take me to them? Sophia studied him with a wariness no 5-year-old should possess. You'll really help us? You won't call the people who take children away. I promise, Ethan said, and for the first time in 16 months he felt something other than emptiness, a strange mixture of guilt, responsibility, and a desperate need to know the truth. Sophia hesitated for one more moment before nodding. Okay, but Emma and Lucas will be scared of you at first. They're scared of everyone except me. Ethan stood and gently took the painting from her small hands. I'll buy this from you, as promised, he said, giving her the money. And I'll help you and your brother and sister. No one is going to separate you. As they began walking through the swirling snow, Ethan caught himself staring at the child's profile. The resemblance was undeniable, raising questions he was afraid to answer. Had Olivia known she was pregnant when he left? Had she tried to contact him? The thought that she might have reached out while he was building his fortune, only to be ignored or rebuffed by his assistant, made him feel physically ill. The wind picked up as they turned onto a side street, lined with run-down apartment buildings. Sophia had begun to limp slightly, her inadequate shoes soaked through with slush. Without a word, Ethan lifted her into his arms, feeling how alarmingly light she was. It's this one, she said, pointing to a dilapidated building with peeling paint and a broken security door. As they entered the unheated lobby, Ethan felt a growing sense of dread. What would he find upstairs? What had happened to Olivia? And most importantly, what responsibility did he bear for whatever he was about to discover? Sophia directed him to the 4th floor, then down a dimly lit hallway to apartment 4C. We have to be quiet, she whispered, as she produced a key from her coat pocket. Lucas might be sleeping. The door swung open, revealing a scene that would forever change the course of Ethan Bradley's life. The apartment was barely warmer than the hallway outside. Ethan stood in the doorway, momentarily unable to process what he was seeing. A single bulb cast harsh shadows across walls stained with water damage and mold. The furniture consisted of a threadbare couch with exposed springs, a rickety table with mismatched chairs, and a single mattress on the floor, covered with a collection of worn blankets. Emma? I'm back, Sophia called softly as she wiggled out of Ethan's arms. I brought someone to help us. From behind the couch emerged a small girl, perhaps 4 years old, with the same dark hair as Sophia but curlier. She wore pajamas that were clearly too small, and her eyes widened with fear at the sight of Ethan. It's okay, Sophia reassured her sister. This man knew Mommy. He bought her sunflower picture and gave us money for food. Emma remained partially hidden behind the couch, watching Ethan with undisguised suspicion. Where's Lucas? Sophia asked, moving toward the mattress. Sleeping, Emma whispered. He was crying for a long time because his tummy hurts. Ethan followed Sophia's gaze to the mattress, where a small bundle was curled beneath a thin blanket. The toddler's face was flushed with what appeared to be fever, his breathing slightly labored. He's sick, Sophia explained, her voice suddenly much older than her years. I tried to make him feel better with the medicine Mommy used to give us, but we ran out. A wave of horror washed over Ethan as the full reality of the situation crystallized in his mind. These children, one possibly his own daughter, had been surviving alone in this freezing apartment with no adult supervision, no proper food, no medical care. How long had this been going on? "Sophia," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "What happened to your mother? When did she go to heaven?" Sophia's small shoulders slumped. 2 months ago. She was sick for a long time before that. She told me I had to be brave and take care of Emma and Lucas if anything happened to her. 2 months. These children had been alone for 2 months in the dead of winter, with only a 5-year-old acting as caretaker. The thought made Ethan physically ill. "Is there no one else, no family who could help you?" Sophia shook her head. "Mommy said we have an aunt somewhere, but they didn't talk. It was just us." She looked up at him with eyes too old for her young face. "I promised Mommy I wouldn't let anyone separate us." Ethan stood up, trying to think clearly through the tumult of emotions. The immediate priority was clear. These children needed proper food, medical attention, and warmth. The larger questions, including his possible paternity, would have to wait. "Sophia, Emma," he said, keeping his voice calm and gentle, "your brother needs to see a doctor and you all need a warm place to stay. I'd like to take you to my home tonight, and tomorrow we can figure out what to do next. Would that be okay?" Emma shrank further behind the couch, but Sophia stood straighter. "Will you keep us together? You promised." "I'll keep you together," Ethan confirmed. "All 3 of you will stay with me for now. I have plenty of room, warm beds and food, and I'll call my doctor to come check on Lucas." Sophia seemed to consider this, her small face serious. "We need to bring some things, and Lucas's special blanket. He can't sleep without it." "Of course. Gather whatever you need while I call my driver." As Sophia and Emma began collecting their meager belongings, Ethan stepped into the hallway to make phone calls. First to his driver, instructing him to come immediately with the SUV rather than the sedan. Then to his housekeeper, asking her to prepare guest rooms and purchase children's essentials for delivery tonight. Finally to his personal physician, explaining the situation and requesting an urgent house call. When he returned to the apartment, Sophia had packed a single tattered backpack and was attempting to dress Lucas, who had awakened and was whimpering softly. Emma remained wary, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. "My driver will be here in 5 minutes," Ethan said. "Let me help with Lucas." He approached the toddler carefully, aware of how frightening he must appear to these children. Lucas stared at him with feverish eyes, but allowed Ethan to wrap him in the blanket Sophia indicated was special to him. The child was burning with fever. "I'm going to pick him up now," Ethan told the girls. "My doctor will meet us at my apartment to make sure he's okay." As he lifted the toddler, a wave of protectiveness swept over him, a feeling so unexpected and powerful that it momentarily took his breath away. Lucas settled against his chest, too weak to protest, while Sophia zipped her backpack and took Emma's hand. "Is there anything else you need to bring?" Ethan asked, looking around the dismal apartment. Sophia's eyes moved to a small box on the rickety table. "Mommy's special things," she said, "and her pictures of us." Ethan nodded. "We'll take those too. And the sunflower painting." Minutes later, they were in the elevator heading down to meet Ethan's driver. The contrast between the children's threadbare clothing and Ethan's tailored suit couldn't have been starker. He felt Emma's suspicious gaze and Sophia's cautious hope as the elevator descended. "Mr. Bradley?" his driver said, clearly surprised by the sight of his employer carrying a small child and accompanied by 2 little girls. To his credit, he recovered quickly. "The SUV is right out front, sir." Once the children were settled in the heated vehicle, Ethan gave his driver the address and then pulled out his phone to make one more call, to Jonathan Reed, his personal attorney. This situation would require legal navigation, especially if his suspicions about Sophia's paternity proved correct. "Jonathan, I need you at my penthouse tomorrow morning, 8 sharp. It's urgent and completely confidential." He kept his voice low, aware of Sophia watching him intently from the back seat, "and bring whatever paperwork might be needed for temporary guardianship of minor children." The look of alarm on the driver's face in the rearview mirror wasn't lost on Ethan, but he had no time to explain. His entire world had shifted in the span of an hour, and he was operating purely on instinct now. Instinct and a growing certainty that these children were his responsibility, regardless of biology. The drive to his Central Park West penthouse took 20 minutes through the snowy streets. Lucas had fallen asleep against Ethan's side, his breathing still labored. Sophia sat rigid, one arm protectively around Emma, her eyes taking in the increasingly opulent neighborhoods they passed through. "Your house must be very big," she finally said as they pulled up to Ethan's building. "It is," he acknowledged. "Too big for just one person. There's plenty of room for all of you." The doorman's eyes widened at the sight of Ethan Bradley, notorious workaholic and recluse since his wife's passing, emerging from his car with 3 bedraggled children. "Good evening, Mr. Bradley," he managed, holding the door open. "Evening, Robert. These are my guests. Please notify me when Dr. Patel arrives. She should be here within the hour." The private elevator to the penthouse was another source of wonder for the girls. Emma, still clutching her rabbit, seemed to relax slightly at the novelty of the mirrored interior and smooth ascent. Sophia maintained her serious expression, clearly feeling the weight of responsibility for her siblings. When the elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer, both girls gasped. The space was a study in tasteful luxury, soaring ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering city and snow-covered park, museum-quality art on the walls. It couldn't have been more different from the squalid apartment they had just left. "Mrs. Winters," Ethan called, and his housekeeper appeared, her usual composure momentarily broken by the sight of the children. "Mr. Bradley, I've prepared the guest rooms as you requested, and the delivery from Barney's should arrive within the hour. Is there anything else these little ones need immediately? A warm bath for the girls, I think, and we'll need to check the baby's temperature. Dr. Patel is on her way to examine him." "Of course." Mrs. Winters approached the children with a warm smile. "Hello, dears. You must be cold and hungry after being out in that terrible weather. How about some hot chocolate while the bath is running?" Emma shrank back against Sophia, who continued to assess the situation with that unnervingly adult gaze. "It's okay," Ethan assured them. "Mrs. Winters has worked for me for many years. She's going to help make sure you're comfortable." "What about Lucas?" Sophia asked, eyeing her brother in Ethan's arms. "I'll take care of him until the doctor arrives," Ethan promised. "You and Emma go with Mrs. Winters to get warm and changed." Sophia hesitated, then nodded solemnly. "Come on, Emma. It's okay." She turned to Ethan, her expression both vulnerable and fiercely protective. "You won't let anyone take us away while we're having hot chocolate, will you?" The question pierced Ethan to his core. "No one is taking you anywhere," he said firmly. "You have my word." As Mrs. Winters led the girls toward the guest wing, Ethan carried Lucas to the master suite. The contrast between this feverish child and the opulent surroundings struck him with the force of a physical blow. How could he have lived in such excess while these children, one possibly his own flesh and blood, had been suffering in poverty just miles away? He laid Lucas gently on his bed, noting how the toddler's eyes opened briefly, confused by the unfamiliar surroundings, before slipping back into feverish sleep. Carefully, Ethan checked the child's temperature with the thermometer Mrs. Winters had provided, 102.3 degrees Celsius. Not dangerously high, but certainly concerning. While waiting for the doctor, Ethan found himself studying Lucas's features, searching for any resemblance to himself or to the Olivia he remembered. The child's dark curls and olive complexion clearly came from his mother, but there was something in the shape of his brow that reminded Ethan of his own father. And then there was Sophia. The serious eyes, the determined chin, the way she carried herself with such responsibility. Could she truly be his daughter? The timing certainly aligned with his relationship with Olivia. And if she was, what did that make him? A father who had abandoned his child before she was even born. A man who had pursued wealth and success while his daughter scrounged for food and sold paintings on street corners. The intercom buzzed, announcing Dr. Patel's arrival. As Ethan went to meet her, the enormity of what had happened tonight, and what might lie ahead, settled over him like a physical weight. Whether or not a DNA test proved his paternity, he already knew with absolute certainty that his life would never be the same again. These children had crashed into his carefully controlled existence, awakening feelings he thought had died with Sarah. And somewhere in that realization was the faintest glimmer of something he hadn't felt in a very long time: purpose. By morning, Ethan's penthouse had undergone a transformation. The previously pristine guest rooms now contained hastily assembled children's furniture, delivered overnight at a premium that Ethan hadn't even bothered to negotiate. Lucas's fever had broken after Dr. Patel's treatment, a simple ear infection, thankfully, rather than anything more serious. The girls had bathed, eaten their first proper meal in what appeared to be weeks, and fallen asleep in the same bed despite Mrs. Winters's preparation of separate rooms. Ethan himself hadn't slept. After the doctor left and the children were settled, he had retreated to his home office with the small box of Mommy's special things that Sophia had insisted on bringing. With a tumbler of scotch in hand, he'd spent hours sifting through the contents, photographs, letters, small mementos of a life he had once been part of and then abandoned. There were dozens of photos of Olivia with the children. Sophia as a newborn, Emma's first birthday, Lucas taking wobbly steps. Each image was a dagger of guilt. Olivia looked progressively more tired in the later photos, her once vibrant beauty dimmed by what Ethan now understood had been illness. But her smile when looking at her children never wavered. At the bottom of the box, he found what he had been both hoping for and dreading, a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon, letters addressed to him in Olivia's distinctive handwriting. Letters that had never been sent. The first was dated shortly after he'd ended their relationship. Ethan, I've started this letter a dozen times, trying to find the right words. There's never an easy way to tell someone they're going to be a father, especially when that someone has made it clear they don't want any complications in their life. That's what you called our relationship, remember? A complication. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. The timing leaves no question that this child is yours. I'm not writing to demand anything. I know you're building your company and that nothing is more important to you than that success. I simply believe you have the right to know. I've decided to keep this baby, with or without your involvement. I've always wanted to be a mother, and while the timing isn't what I planned, this child is a blessing I choose to embrace. If you want to be part of our lives, you know where to find me. If not, I understand. But know that I will tell our child about you someday, and I will only speak with kindness. Olivia. The later letters documented Sophia's birth, her first steps, her first words. Olivia had written to him regularly for nearly 3 years, creating a paper trail of a life he should have shared. The letters stopped abruptly around the time Emma must have been born, whether because Olivia had given up on him ever responding, or because she had met someone else, Lucas's father presumably. Ethan couldn't tell. The final item in the box was a sealed envelope with his name on it, dated just 2 months ago. With trembling hands, Ethan had opened it to find Olivia's last words to him. Ethan, if you're reading this, then Sophia has somehow found you, or you found her. I always knew that someday your paths would cross. There's too much of you in her for it not to happen. That same determination, that same sharp mind. Even at 5, she's already showing the leadership qualities that made you so successful. The doctors say I don't have much time left. I've been fighting this illness for over a year, but it's finally winning. My greatest fear isn't dying, it's what will happen to my children afterward. Sophia, your daughter, who has never complained even as she's had to grow up too fast. Emma, who is so sensitive and artistic, just like I was. And little Lucas, barely 2, who may not even remember me. I have no right to ask anything of you after all these years. You made your choice and I made mine. But if you're reading this, then you've met Sophia, and I have to believe that meeting your daughter has affected you in some way. So I'm asking, not for myself, but for 3 innocent children who deserve better than the foster care system and the risk of being separated. Please look after them, all of them. They're a package deal. Sophia would never forgive anyone who separated her from her siblings, and I would never forgive myself for putting that choice on her young shoulders. I don't expect you to suddenly become a father. I know that's not who you are or what you wanted. But you have the resources to ensure they're cared for, educated, and most importantly, kept together. Whether that means supporting them from a distance or welcoming them into your life is for you to decide. For what it's worth, despite everything, I never regretted our time together or the daughter we created. She has been the greatest joy of my life. Olivia. The letter had left Ethan devastated, confronting him with the consequences of his choices in a way nothing else could have. He had spent the remainder of the night researching pediatricians, schools, childcare options, anything to keep his mind occupied and away from the crushing weight of guilt. Now, as morning light streamed through the penthouse windows, Ethan stood in the doorway of the guest room where all three children slept. Sophia was in the middle, one arm protectively around each sibling even in sleep. The sight stirred something profound in him, a feeling he couldn't quite name, somewhere between responsibility and tenderness. His intercom buzzed softly, announcing Jonathan Reed's arrival. With one last look at the sleeping children, Ethan quietly closed their door and went to meet his attorney. "You look terrible," Jonathan observed bluntly as he entered the penthouse, briefcase in hand. "Care to explain why I'm here at 8 a.m. on a Saturday to discuss guardianship papers?" Ethan led him to the Home Office, where the sunflower painting now rested on an easel. "My life changed last night, Jonathan," he said simply, pouring them both coffee. "I need your legal expertise to navigate what happens next." Over the next half hour, Ethan explained the previous night's events, showed Jonathan the letters, and outlined what he wanted to do. The attorney listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "Let me make sure I understand," Jonathan said when Ethan finished. "You believe the oldest child is your biological daughter from a relationship that ended before you knew about the pregnancy. The mother recently passed away, leaving 3 minor children who have been living alone for 2 months. You brought them to your home last night and now want to pursue guardianship of all 3, possibly with the intention of adoption." "That's correct." Jonathan sighed, removing his glasses to pinch the bridge of his nose. "Ethan, while your intentions are admirable, this is legally complex. You have a potential claim to the oldest child if paternity is established, but no biological connection to the younger 2. There could be other relatives with stronger legal claims. Child Protective Services will need to be involved. This isn't something we can handle with a few signatures today." "I'm aware of the complications," Ethan replied, his voice hardening. "But I made a promise to keep those children together, and I intend to keep it. Whatever legal obstacles exist, I expect you to find a way around them." "It's not that simple." "Make it that simple," Ethan interrupted. "I'm prepared to use every resource at my disposal, financial, political, whatever it takes. Those children are not going into the system, and they're not being separated. Period." Jonathan studied his client with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "This is unexpected. Since Sarah's passing, you've barely left your office except to come home and sleep. Now suddenly, you're determined to become guardian to 3 children, only one of whom might be biologically yours?" Ethan turned to look out the window at the snow-covered park below. "I can't explain it, Jonathan. When I saw those kids living in that apartment, trying to survive with only a 5-year-old to care for them, something changed. For the first time since losing Sarah, I felt something other than emptiness." He turned back to face his attorney. "I have the means to give these children everything they need. Why wouldn't I?" Before Jonathan could respond, the office door creaked open slightly, revealing Sophia in oversized pajamas, her dark hair tousled from sleep. She looked uncertainly between the 2 men. "Good morning, Sophia," Ethan said gently. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, still hovering in the doorway. "Emma and Lucas are still sleeping. I wanted to check if you were still here." The unspoken fear behind her words was clear. She was afraid he might have disappeared, leaving them alone again. "I'm still here," Ethan assured her. "And this is my friend Jonathan. He's helping me with some paperwork so that you and your brother and sister can stay here with me." Sophia's gaze shifted to Jonathan, assessing him with that unnervingly adult scrutiny. "Are you one of the people who takes children away?" Jonathan looked startled by the direct question. "No," he said after a moment. "I'm a lawyer who helps Mr. Bradley with legal matters." "Like making sure we stay together?" Sophia pressed. "Yes," Ethan answered before Jonathan could respond. "Exactly like that." Mrs. Winters appeared in the hallway behind Sophia. "There you are, dear. Would you like some breakfast? I've made pancakes and there's hot chocolate." Sophia's serious expression lightened slightly. "Can I take some to Emma and Lucas when they wake up?" "Of course you can," Mrs. Winters smiled. "Come along now and let Mr. Bradley finish his meeting." After Sophia left with the housekeeper, Jonathan turned to Ethan with raised eyebrows. "She's remarkably composed for a 5-year-old. "She's had to be," Ethan said quietly. "She's been the caretaker for her siblings since Olivia fell ill. No child should have to grow up that fast." Jonathan nodded thoughtfully, then opened his briefcase. All right, let's discuss strategy. First, we need a DNA test to establish paternity of Sophia. That gives us legal standing for her at least. For the younger two, we'll need to petition for emergency guardianship on the grounds that separating siblings would cause additional trauma. For the next hour, they outlined a comprehensive legal approach: emergency petitions, character witnesses, financial guarantees, and contingency plans for various scenarios. Jonathan was thorough, identifying potential obstacles and ways to overcome them. "What about the father of the younger children?" he asked. "If he comes forward, his claim would likely supersede yours." Ethan shook his head. "According to these photos and letters, Olivia was a single mother to all three. There's no mention of another father figure." "We'll still need to investigate that possibility," Jonathan cautioned. "The court will want to ensure all avenues have been explored before granting guardianship to a non-relative." Their discussion was interrupted by sounds of childish laughter from elsewhere in the penthouse, an utterly foreign sound in Ethan's carefully ordered home. Both men paused, listening to the unfamiliar but somehow welcome intrusion. "I should go check on them," Ethan said, rising from his desk. "One more thing," Jonathan said, his tone serious. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Ethan? Taking on 3 children is an enormous responsibility, emotionally, practically, legally. It will completely transform your life. Once we start this process, turning back becomes increasingly difficult and potentially traumatic for the children." Ethan considered the question carefully. 16 hours ago, he had been a solitary figure moving between his office and his empty penthouse, his days measured in market fluctuations and acquisition strategies. Now he was contemplating becoming responsible for 3 young lives: their education, their emotional well-being, their futures. "I've never been more certain of anything," he finally answered. "For the first time since Sarah died, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. These children need me, and maybe I need them too." Jonathan nodded, accepting the answer. "I'll file the emergency guardianship petition today. The DNA results will take a few days. In the meantime, you should prepare for a home visit from CPS. They'll want to ensure this environment is suitable for children." "I'll have everything ready," Ethan promised, walking his attorney to the door. "And Jonathan." "Thank you." After seeing Jonathan out, Ethan followed the sounds of laughter to the kitchen, where he found a scene that would have been unimaginable yesterday. Mrs. Winters was helping Emma pour maple syrup on a stack of pancakes, while Sophia carefully cut pieces for Lucas, who sat in a hastily purchased booster seat, his earlier fever seemingly forgotten as he banged a spoon on the table. "Mr. Ethan," Emma called out the first time she had directly addressed him. "Mrs. Winters made pancakes shaped like animals." "So I see," Ethan replied, surprised by the warmth that spread through him at the simple interaction. "Which animal is your favorite?" "The elephant," she said shyly, pointing to her plate. "Sophia got a giraffe and Lucas has a lion." "Those look delicious," Ethan said, accepting the cup of coffee Mrs. Winters handed him with a knowing smile. "After breakfast, would you all like to see the rest of the apartment? There's a room I think you might particularly like." "What kind of room?" Sophia asked, her protective instincts never fully at rest. "A room full of books and games that hasn't been used in a very long time," Ethan replied. "It was going to be a nursery once." The words slipped out before he could censor them, a reference to the room he and Sarah had prepared in anticipation of children they never had the chance to conceive. For a moment, grief threatened to overwhelm him, but then Sophia's small hand touched his arm. "We'll be very careful with the books," she promised solemnly. "I'm teaching Emma to read, and Lucas likes when we read to him." Ethan looked down at her earnest face and felt something shift within him, as if pieces of his broken heart were trying to realign themselves into something new. "I think the books would like that very much," he said softly. "They've been waiting for someone to read them for a long time." As he sat with the children through their breakfast, answering Emma's increasingly curious questions and helping Lucas with his sippy cup, Ethan realized that Jonathan was right. His life was transforming before his eyes. The penthouse that had been a mausoleum to his grief was filling with life again. The changes were simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Would he be capable of being what these children needed? Could a man who had ruthlessly prioritized career success over human connection learn to put 3 vulnerable lives before everything else? Ethan didn't know the answers yet, but for the first time in nearly 2 years, he found himself looking toward the future with something that felt remarkably like hope. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity to Ethan's previously ordered life. The DNA test confirmed what he had already come to accept. Sophia was indeed his biological daughter. With Jonathan's expert navigation of the legal system, Ethan secured temporary guardianship of all 3 children pending further court proceedings. Child Protective Services had conducted their home visit, finding no reason to object to the arrangement after seeing the children thriving in their new environment. For the first time since founding his company, Ethan had adjusted his work schedule dramatically. He now left the office by 4 each afternoon to be home when the children returned from their new prestigious private school. His executive team had been shocked by the transformation, but adapted quickly, learning to present the most critical matters during his shortened office hours. The penthouse itself had undergone a similar transformation. The unused nursery had become a vibrant playroom filled with books, educational toys, and art supplies. The formal dining room, previously used only when Ethan hosted business associates, now featured children's artwork displayed proudly alongside his collection of contemporary art. Even the pristine white furniture had been replaced with more practical pieces that could withstand occasional spills and sticky fingers. Mrs. Winters had shifted effortlessly from formal housekeeper to something of a grandmother figure, teaching Emma to bake cookies and helping Sophia with her homework. Ethan had also hired a nanny, Ms. Pearson, a warm but no-nonsense former kindergarten teacher, to help with the children while he was at work. On this particular evening, Ethan sat in the living room reviewing school enrollment papers while the children played nearby. Lucas was stacking blocks on the carpet, his health fully restored after his ear infection. Emma was drawing at the coffee table, her artistic talent, clearly inherited from her mother, already evident in her detailed pictures. Sophia sat cross-legged with a book beyond her years, occasionally looking up to check on her siblings. The intercom buzzed, and Mrs. Winters's voice came through. "Mr. Bradley, there's a Ms. Martinez here to see you. She says it's regarding the children." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. He had been expecting this moment, had prepared for it legally, but the reality still sent a wave of anxiety through him. "Please show her in, Mrs. Winters." Sophia's head snapped up at the name Martinez. "Is it Mommy's sister?" she asked, her voice small. "I believe it might be," Ethan answered carefully. "Why don't you continue reading while I speak with her?" But Sophia closed her book, her posture stiffening. She never came before, not even when Mommy was really sick. Before Ethan could respond, Mrs. Winters appeared with their visitor. Gabriela Martinez was immediately recognizable as Olivia's sister. They shared the same high cheekbones and expressive eyes, though Gabriela's features were sharper, her manner more tightly controlled. She wore a tailored suit that suggested professional success, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Mr. Bradley," she said, her voice cool as her eyes swept over the luxurious apartment before settling on the children. "I see my nieces and nephew appear quite comfortable here." "Ms. Martinez," Ethan replied, rising to greet her. "We've been expecting you to contact us. Please have a seat." Gabriela remained standing, her attention now focused entirely on the children. "Sophia, Emma, Lucas," she said, her voice softening slightly. "I'm your Aunt Gabriela, your mother's sister." Emma looked uncertainly between the stranger and Ethan. Lucas, too young to understand, continued playing with his blocks. Only Sophia responded, her chin lifting in a gesture that reminded Ethan painfully of himself in difficult negotiations. "We know who you are," Sophia said quietly. "Mommy had your picture." A flicker of emotion crossed Gabriela's face. "I've been trying to find you for weeks. After I learned about Olivia's passing, I came to New York immediately, but you were no longer at the apartment. Perhaps we should continue this conversation privately," Ethan suggested, nodding toward his home office. "Ms. Pearson can stay with the children." Gabriela hesitated, then nodded curtly. As they moved toward the office, Sophia caught Ethan's hand. "You promised," she whispered, her eyes wide with worry. "I remember my promise," he assured her quietly. "No one is taking you anywhere." Once in the office with the door closed, Gabriela's professional composure cracked slightly. "I want to know exactly how my sister's children ended up in your custody, Mr. Bradley, and I want to understand why I wasn't notified immediately when they were found." Ethan gestured to a chair. "Please, sit down." This is a complicated situation that deserves a thorough explanation. Reluctantly, Gabriella took a seat, her posture rigid. I'm listening. I encountered Sophia selling one of Olivia's paintings on the street during a snowstorm, Ethan began, choosing his words carefully. When I recognized the signature and realized who she might be, I accompanied her back to the apartment where I found all 3 children living alone in deplorable conditions. Lucas was ill with an ear infection. They had minimal food and inadequate heat. Gabriella's expression tightened. And you took it upon yourself to remove them from their home rather than contacting authorities. I made an emergency decision based on their immediate welfare, Ethan replied evenly. Once they were safe, warm, and receiving medical attention, I contacted both my attorney and Child Protective Services to ensure everything was handled properly. We've since obtained temporary guardianship through the courts. Temporary guardianship, Gabriella repeated, her tone sharp. On what grounds? You're a complete stranger to these children. Not entirely, Ethan said, sliding a folder across the desk. This contains the DNA test confirming that Sophia is my biological daughter. Olivia and I were in a relationship before Sophia was born. Gabriella stared at the document, her composure momentarily shaken. Olivia never mentioned. She said Sophia's father wasn't in the picture. I didn't know about Sophia until recently, Ethan admitted. Olivia tried to contact me after we separated, but those letters never reached me. I found them among her belongings after bringing the children here. Silence fell between them as Gabriella processed this information. Finally, she looked up, her gaze direct and challenging. Even if Sophia is your biological child, Emma and Lucas are not. They are my blood relatives, and as their only living aunt, I have a stronger legal claim to them. The words Ethan had been dreading. Miss Martinez, with all due respect, where were you when Olivia was dying? Where were you during the 2 months these children survived alone in that apartment? Sophia was selling paintings on street corners to buy food while you were... Where exactly? Gabriella flinched as if struck. I didn't know Olivia was ill. We had a falling out years ago. After our parents died, we disagreed about how to handle their estate. Words were said that couldn't be taken back. We stopped speaking. And yet you're here now claiming family rights. Because they are my family, Gabriella snapped, her composed facade crumbling. I may have failed Olivia, but I won't fail her children. When I learned of her passing through a mutual friend and couldn't locate the children, I feared the worst. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Ethan studied her, recognizing genuine distress beneath the hostility. I understand your concern, he said more gently. But the children have been through tremendous trauma. They've lost their mother, lived in desperate conditions, and only recently found stability. Sophia has been adamant that they stay together, and I've promised to ensure that happens. By keeping them with you, Gabriella said, a statement rather than a question. By providing them with a safe, stable home where they can remain together as siblings, yes. Gabriella stood abruptly. I've already consulted an attorney, Mr. Bradley. While I'm not contesting your biological connection to Sophia, I intend to petition for custody of Emma and Lucas. They belong with family, not with a wealthy stranger who thinks he can buy his way into parenthood. The accusations stung, but Ethan kept his voice measured. Before you proceed with legal action, Ms. Martinez, I'd like you to consider something. Those children in the next room have been through enough upheaval. Sophia has acted as their primary caregiver for months. Separating them now would cause additional trauma that none of them deserve. I'm not suggesting separating them permanently, Gabriella countered. Sophia could visit her siblings regularly. I'm prepared to move to New York and provide a proper home for all 3 of them, but I recognize your paternal rights regarding Sophia. Ethan felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Despite his promises to Sophia, the legal reality was more complicated than he wanted to admit. As their biological aunt, Gabriella did have a strong claim to Emma and Lucas. His temporary guardianship could be overturned if she proved herself a suitable guardian. Before you make any decisions, he said, opening a drawer and removing the box of Olivia's belongings. There's something you should see. He handed her the final letter Olivia had written to him. Gabriella took it with visible reluctance, her eyes scanning the words her sister had written in her final days. As she read, her composed expression gradually crumbled. She never told me she was sick, Gabriella whispered, her voice breaking. All those years wasted on a stupid argument, and she never reached out. Or perhaps she did, and her attempts never reached you, Ethan suggested gently, just as her letters to me went undelivered. Gabriella looked up, tears now flowing freely. She specifically asked you to keep them together. She did, and I intend to honor that request. At the expense of my relationship with my only living family members? Gabriella challenged, though her voice had lost some of its earlier hostility. Ethan considered his response carefully. What if there's a third option? One that doesn't require an adversarial legal battle or separating the children? I'm listening. You clearly care about these children, even though you've only just learned of their existence. Instead of fighting over them, what if we found a way to both be present in their lives? You're their aunt, an irreplaceable connection to their mother. I would never want to sever that connection. Gabriella studied him skeptically. What exactly are you proposing? Regular visitation to start. A chance for you to build relationships with the children while they remain in the stable environment they've begun to adjust to. Once trust is established, we can reassess the arrangement based on what seems best for their well-being. And if I find your parenting inadequate, if I believe they would be better off with me, then we'll address that concern when it arises, Ethan said. But I'm asking you to give this arrangement a chance before pursuing legal action that would further disrupt their lives. Gabriella fell silent, considering the proposal. Before she could respond, a small knock came at the office door, followed by Sophia's voice. Mr. Ethan, is everything okay? Ethan glanced at Gabriella, who quickly wiped away her tears and nodded. Come in, Sophia. The door opened and Sophia entered cautiously, her eyes moving between the adults. Emma's asking if we're still going to have story time before bed, she said, though her real purpose in interrupting was transparent. Of course we are, Ethan assured her. Ms. Martinez and I are just finishing our talk. Sophia turned her attention to Gabriella. Did you know my mommy drew pictures of sunflowers because they always turn to face the sun? She said we should be like sunflowers and look for light even on dark days. Gabriella's composure faltered again. She told you that? Our mother used to say the same thing to us when we were little. Sophia nodded solemnly. I'm teaching Emma and Lucas too, Mr. Ethan hung Mommy's sunflower painting in the living room so we can see it every day. That's wonderful, Sophia, Gabriella managed, her voice thick with emotion. Are you going to take Emma and Lucas away? Sophia asked directly, the fear evident beneath her composed exterior. Gabriella looked stricken by the question. I'm your aunt, Sophia. I want what's best for all of you. We need to stay together, Sophia insisted, her small hands clenched into fists. I promised Mommy, and Mr. Ethan promised me. The raw emotion in the child's voice seemed to affect Gabriella deeply. She knelt down to Sophia's level, her expression softening. I can see how much you love your brother and sister. Your mother would be very proud of how you've taken care of them. Then please don't separate us, Sophia whispered. Please. Gabriella looked up at Ethan, then back to Sophia. I need some time to think about everything, but I promise you this. I won't do anything that would hurt you or your siblings. Would it be all right if I came to visit you sometimes? I'd like to get to know all of you better. Sophia considered this, then nodded cautiously. You could come for story time if you want. We're reading Charlotte's Web. I'd like that very much, Gabriella said, a genuine smile breaking through her tears. Perhaps not tonight, but soon. Seemingly satisfied with this answer, Sophia turned to Ethan. Ms. Pearson says Lucas is getting sleepy. Tell her we'll be right there for story time, Ethan replied. Why don't you go help Emma pick out tonight's chapter? After Sophia left, Gabriella rose to her feet, composing herself. She's remarkable. So much like Olivia in some ways, and yet she has her own unique spirit, Ethan finished. All three of them do. Gabriella gathered her purse, her earlier hostility visibly diminished. I'm not withdrawing my concerns, Mr. Bradley, but I'm willing to take some time to observe this arrangement before making any legal decisions. That's all I'm asking, Ethan said, relief washing through him. Would you like to join us for story time? The offer stands. Not tonight, Gabriella declined, her professional mask slipping back into place. This has been overwhelming, but I would like to schedule a proper visit soon. Of course, we'll be here. As he showed Gabriella out, Ethan felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. The threat wasn't entirely gone, But a door had been opened for potential cooperation rather than conflict. For now, at least, his promise to Sophia remained intact. In the living room, he found all three children in their pajamas, nestled together on the couch with their book. The scene of domestic tranquility struck him powerfully. How quickly he had grown accustomed to these little people in his life, how fiercely protective he felt toward them. "Is the lady going to be our new mommy?" Emma asked innocently, as Ethan sat beside them. "No, sweetheart," he answered gently. "That was your Aunt Gabriella, your mother's sister. She might come visit us sometime so you can get to know her." "Will she take us away?" Sophia asked, the worry still evident in her eyes, despite Gabriella's reassurances. Ethan chose his words carefully, aware of the legal uncertainties that still loomed. "I promised to keep you all together, and I meant it. Your aunt and I both want what's best for you." This seemed to satisfy Sophia for the moment. She handed him the book, settling back against the cushions between her siblings. "We're ready for Chapter 7. As Ethan began to read, he was acutely conscious of the precarious nature of their newfound family. Gabriella's appearance had shaken the foundation he'd been carefully building, reminding him that his promises to these children might be tested in ways he couldn't fully control. Yet looking at their trusting faces as he read about Charlotte the spider and her web of words, Ethan felt a renewed determination. These children had already lost too much. Whatever legal battles lay ahead, he would fight with everything he had to keep his promise to Sophia, to keep them together, to give them the stable, loving home they deserved. The sunflower painting watched over them from its place of honor on the wall, a silent reminder of the woman who had connected all their lives in ways none of them could have anticipated. As Lucas drifted to sleep against his shoulder and Emma's eyelids grew heavy, Ethan found himself wondering if Olivia somehow knew this moment would come, if in her final letter she had been reaching across time to create this unlikely family from the broken pieces of their shared past. Spring arrived in New York with a burst of color and warmth that mirrored the transformation taking place in Ethan's life. The temporary guardianship had been extended while the courts evaluated the more permanent arrangements, and the initial tension with Gabriella had evolved into an uneasy truce. She visited weekly, gradually building relationships with the children, while observing Ethan's parenting with a critical but increasingly less hostile eye. The children themselves were flourishing. Lucas had started preschool 3 mornings a week, proudly carrying his dinosaur backpack and returning with finger paintings that Ethan displayed in his office. Emma's artistic talents had blossomed under the tutelage of a private art instructor, her work showing remarkable depth for a child of her age. And Sophia, his daughter, a fact that still amazed him daily, had tested into an accelerated program at her school, her natural intelligence finally given the opportunity to thrive. Most surprising to Ethan was his own transformation. The man who had once measured success solely in financial terms now found himself proudly displaying crayon drawings in his executive suite and leaving board meetings early to attend school performances. His colleagues had adjusted to the new reality, some with amusement, others with something approaching respect for the human being emerging from behind the corporate facade. On this particular Saturday morning, Ethan sat at the kitchen island reviewing documents while the children ate breakfast. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following week, and Jonathan had prepared extensive briefings on potential outcomes and strategies. Despite the outward calm Ethan maintained around the children, anxiety gnawed at him whenever he considered the possibility of losing Emma and Lucas to Gabriella's claim. "Mr. Ethan," Emma called, interrupting his thoughts. "Can we go to the park today? Miss Pearson said it's going to be really warm." "That sounds like an excellent idea," he replied, setting aside the legal papers. "We could visit the Central Park Zoo afterward if you'd like." Lucas clapped his hands excitedly. "Monkeys! And we can take a picnic," Sophia suggested, her practical nature always thinking ahead. "Mrs. Winters could make those sandwiches we like." "Perfect planning," Ethan smiled, still amazed at how these simple family activities now formed the highlight of his week. "Let's get cleaned up and ready to go." As the children ran off to prepare for their outing, the doorbell rang, an unusual occurrence, as most visitors to the penthouse were announced by the doorman. Ethan opened the door to find Gabriella standing there, her usual composed appearance noticeably disheveled. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "Is there somewhere private?" Alarmed by her uncharacteristic intensity, Ethan led her to his office. The children are getting ready for a trip to the park. Is everything all right? Gabriella paced the room, her normal poise completely absent. I received a call from my attorney this morning. He's been contacted by someone claiming to be Lucas's biological father. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. What? Who? A man named Daniel Ramirez. Apparently, he had a brief relationship with Olivia shortly after Emma was born. He claims he didn't know about Lucas until recently, when a mutual friend mentioned Olivia's passing and the children's situation. And he's seeking custody? Ethan asked, already calculating the additional complication this would add to their precarious arrangement. That's just it, Gabriella said, finally stopping her pacing to look directly at Ethan. He doesn't want custody. He wants to sign away his parental rights, but he's demanding financial compensation to do so. Blackmail, Ethan stated flatly, anger rising in his chest. He's trying to leverage a child for money. Essentially, yes. He's threatening to pursue custody unless he's compensated for stepping aside. Her disgust was evident. He contacted my attorney rather than yours because he assumed I would be more vulnerable to pressure. Ethan's mind raced through the implications. A biological father would have strong legal standing, possibly stronger than either his claim to Sophia's siblings or Gabriella's claim as an aunt. If this man genuinely pursued custody of Lucas, it could shatter the promise Ethan had made to keep the children together. What exactly did your attorney advise? He asked, keeping his voice calm despite the turmoil he felt. Gabriella sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. That's why I'm here. Why? He advised me to consider negotiating, to treat this as an unfortunate but potentially solvable problem. She looked up, her expression troubled. I wanted to discuss it with you before responding. This affects all of us now. The admission of their shared interest in the children's welfare wasn't lost on Ethan. In the months since their first confrontational meeting, something had shifted between them. Not friendship exactly, but a grudging recognition of their common purpose. How credible is his claim? Ethan asked, his mind already strategizing. My attorney says he provided details about Olivia that suggest he did know her. The timing aligns with when Lucas would have been conceived. She hesitated. And apparently he has photographs of himself with Olivia from that period. Ethan moved to the window, looking out at the park where they had planned to spend their carefree Saturday. Did your attorney get a sense of what kind of compensation he's expecting? He mentioned 6 figures, Gabriella said grimly. He knows you're wealthy, Ethan. That's likely why he's surfacing now rather than when Olivia was struggling alone. The cynical calculation behind the man's actions infuriated Ethan, but he forced himself to think pragmatically. If we pay him off, what guarantee do we have that he won't return for more later? My attorney mentioned legal documents, ironclad termination of parental rights with confidentiality clauses and penalties for breach. And if we refuse to play his game, if we call his bluff, Gabriella's expression grew more troubled, then we risk him actually pursuing custody out of spite. Even if he has no genuine interest in being a father, he could create significant legal complications. At minimum, it would delay the resolution of our current arrangement. Ethan turned back to face her, struck by her use of "our" rather than staking her individual claim. You're suggesting we cooperate on this, rather than let it drive a wedge between our respective positions? I'm suggesting that whatever our differences regarding the children's ultimate placement, neither of us wants to see Lucas taken away by someone who clearly doesn't have his best interests at heart. She straightened in her chair, some of her usual composure returning. Besides, I've observed you with the children these past months. Whatever my initial doubts, I can't deny that you've provided them with stability and genuine care. The acknowledgement was unexpected, and Ethan found himself momentarily speechless. Before he could respond, a soft knock at the door preceded Sophia's entrance. We're ready for the park, she announced, then noticed Gabriella. Oh, hello, Aunt Gabby. Are you coming with us today? Gabriella managed to smile despite the tension in the room. Not today, sweetheart. Mr. Ethan and I have some grown-up things to discuss. Sophia's perceptive gaze moved between them. Is everything okay? You both look worried. Everything's fine, Ethan assured her, making a quick decision. Miss, Pearson can take you all to the park and I'll join you there in a little while. I just need to talk with your aunt about some important paperwork for the judge. Though clearly unsatisfied with this explanation, Sophia nodded. Okay. But don't take too long. Lucas really wants to see the monkeys." After she left, Ethan turned back to Gabriella. "I'm willing to pay what he's asking, but I want your commitment that this doesn't change our current understanding. The hearing proceeds as scheduled without this complication." "Agreed," Gabriella said firmly. "But I'd like to be involved in the negotiations. If we're both contributing to the resolution, we should both have a say in the terms." "That's fair," Ethan acknowledged. "I'll have Jonathan contact your attorney this afternoon to coordinate. The sooner we resolve this, the better." As Gabriella rose to leave, she paused by the sunflower painting that now hung in Ethan's office, a second one he'd commissioned from photographs of Olivia's work to complement the original in the living room. "You know," she said quietly, "when I first met you, I was convinced you were just another wealthy man playing at philanthropy, taking in these children as some sort of project to fill the void after your wife's passing. I was prepared to fight you with everything I had." Ethan waited, sensing she had more to say. "But watching you with them these past months, the way you've restructured your entire life around their needs, how you remember every detail of their school projects, how you sit through Lucas's endless dinosaur stories with genuine interest." She turned to face him. "You're not what I expected, Ethan Bradley." "Neither are you," he replied honestly. "Your dedication to building a relationship with the children, despite our complicated situation, shows character I've come to respect." A moment of understanding passed between them, perhaps the first genuine connection since they'd met. Then Gabriella straightened, her professional demeanor sliding back into place. "I should go. Please have your attorney call mine regarding the Ramirez situation." At the door, she hesitated. "Enjoy the park. The children have been looking forward to it all week." After she left, Ethan called Jonathan, briefly explaining the situation and requesting immediate action. With that in motion, he collected his jacket and headed out to join the children at the park, determined not to let this new threat cast a shadow over their day together. He found them by the sea lion pool, Lucas perched on Ms. Pearson's shoulders, while Emma and Sophia pressed against the viewing glass. Their faces lit up when they spotted him approaching. "Mr. Ethan!" "You missed the feeding," Lucas called out. "The sea lions did tricks." "They'll do another show this afternoon," Ms. Pearson assured him. "We've only just started our exploration." As they continued through the zoo, Ethan found himself studying the children with heightened awareness. Lucas, boisterous and curious, pointing excitedly at every animal. Emma, thoughtful and observant, already sketching in the small notebook she carried everywhere. Sophia, protective and mature, always keeping track of her siblings while still allowing herself moments of childish joy. They had become his family in every way that mattered. The thought of anyone threatening that reality, especially someone motivated purely by financial gain, filled him with a cold determination. Whatever it took, whatever resources were required, he would protect these children from further disruption. During their picnic lunch on a sunny lawn, Emma climbed into his lap, something she had only recently begun to do. "Mr. Ethan," she said seriously, "Sophia says after we see the judge next week, you might be our dad for real. Is that true?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. He'd been careful not to make promises about the hearing's outcome, aware of the many variables still in play. "The judge is going to decide what's best for all of you," he said carefully. "But no matter what happens, I'll always care about you." "But we want to stay with you," she insisted. "Aunt Gabby is nice when she visits, but this is our home now." Ethan met Sophia's watchful gaze over Emma's head. "What do you think about all this?" he asked his daughter. Sophia considered the question with her characteristic seriousness. "I think grown-ups make things more complicated than they need to be," she finally said. "We're happy here. You take good care of us. Aunt Gabby could still visit. Why does a judge need to decide anything?" Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought ruefully. "Sometimes legal matters aren't as simple as they should be," he explained. "But I promise I'm doing everything possible to keep us together." His phone vibrated with a message from Jonathan. "Meeting set with Ramirez and attorneys for tomorrow. Details to follow." Pushing aside his concern, Ethan focused on enjoying the rest of their day, treasuring these moments that had become precious to him in ways he never could have imagined 6 months ago. That evening, after the children were asleep, Ethan sat in his office reviewing the file Jonathan had sent over about Daniel Ramirez. The man had a spotty employment history, minor legal troubles, and no evidence of any attempt to contact Olivia after their brief relationship. Everything pointed to an opportunist who had learned of the situation and seen a chance for financial gain. The sunflower painting caught his eye, Olivia's signature in the corner, a poignant reminder of all that had been lost and found. He wondered what she would make of the current situation. Her sister and her former lover, once adversaries, now cautiously allied to protect her children from yet another disruption. "I'm trying to keep my promise," he said softly to the painting. "To keep them together, to give them the stability they deserve." His phone rang, Jonathan with an update. "Ramirez is pushing for a quick resolution," his attorney reported. "He's agreed to meet tomorrow at our offices. Gabriella and her counsel will be there as well." "Good," Ethan replied, a plan forming in his mind. "I want you to prepare additional documents beyond what he's expecting. I have an idea that might resolve more than just this immediate problem." After outlining his proposal to a surprised but thoughtful Jonathan, Ethan ended the call and walked through the quiet penthouse to check on the children. All three were sleeping peacefully in their rooms that had been decorated to their individual tastes and personalities over the months they'd been with him. Lucas clutched his dinosaur plushie, one foot sticking out from under his covers. Emma was surrounded by the stuffed animals she insisted needed to keep her company at night. And Sophia slept with her mother's journal under her pillow, a connection to the parent she had lost too soon. Looking at them, Ethan felt the weight of responsibility settle more firmly on his shoulders. These children deserved better than to be pawns in adult conflicts, whether legal battles between well-meaning guardians or extortion attempts from opportunistic strangers. Somehow, he had to find a path forward that prioritized their needs above all else. Tomorrow's meeting with Ramirez would address the immediate threat, but the larger question of their future still loomed, with the custody hearing approaching rapidly. As he quietly closed Sophia's door, Ethan resolved that somehow he would find a solution that kept his promise intact, even if it required compromise he hadn't previously considered. The sunflowers in Olivia's painting always turned toward the light, finding brightness even on the darkest days. Perhaps it was time for the adults in this situation to learn from that example, to look beyond their individual desires toward the light of what would truly serve the children best. The meeting with Daniel Ramirez had gone exactly as Ethan anticipated. The man, slick, nervous, and transparently greedy, had arrived with a veneer of paternal concern that crumbled within minutes when Jonathan steered the conversation toward financial terms. Gabriella had watched with poorly concealed disgust as Ramirez named his price for relinquishing rights to a child he had never bothered to meet. What Ramirez hadn't expected was the additional document Ethan had instructed Jonathan to prepare, a comprehensive agreement that addressed not only Lucas's situation, but proposed a joint guardianship arrangement between Ethan and Gabriella that would keep all three children together while recognizing their biological connections to each adult. "I don't understand," Gabriella had said when Jonathan first presented the proposal. "You're suggesting we share legal responsibility for all three children. I'm suggesting we stop fighting over who gets custody and focus instead on giving these children the family connections they deserve," Ethan had explained. "You're their link to Olivia, to their heritage and history. So I'm Sophia's biological father and have established a stable home for all of them. Why should they have to choose?" The idea had been radical, requiring careful legal structuring, but the more they discussed it, the more sense it made. Sophia would legally be recognized as Ethan's daughter, while Emma and Lucas would have joint guardianship arrangements that gave both Ethan and Gabriella defined roles and responsibilities. Most importantly, the children would remain together in the home they had come to know, with Gabriella having guaranteed visitation and involvement in major decisions. Ramirez, interested only in his payout, had signed the papers terminating his parental rights without bothering to read the additional arrangements being made. After he left, Gabriella had studied the joint guardianship proposal with her attorney for nearly an hour before looking up at Ethan with newfound respect. "This is unexpected," she had admitted. "Most men in your position would fight for exclusive control. Most men in my position haven't seen these children overcome what they have," Ethan had replied. "They need stability, but they also need family. You're their family, Gabriella. I won't pretend otherwise." After extensive discussion and minor revisions, they had agreed to present the joint arrangement to the family court judge at the upcoming hearing. For the first time since Gabriella had appeared at his door, Ethan felt cautiously optimistic about the future. Now the day of the hearing had arrived. Ethan adjusted his tie in the mirror, aware of Sophia watching him from the doorway of his bedroom. "Are you nervous?" she asked, her perceptiveness uncanny as always. "A little," he admitted, seeing no point in hiding the truth from this child who had experienced more of life's harsh realities than most adults. "But I think things will work out well today. Because of the special plan you and Aunt Gabby made." Ethan turned to her in surprise. "How did you know about that?" Sophia gave him a look that somehow managed to be both childlike and worldly wise. "I heard you talking on the phone to Mr. Jonathan, and Aunt Gabby asked me yesterday how I would feel if she became more like a second parent instead of just an aunt who visits." "And how would you feel about that?" Ethan asked carefully. She considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "I think it would be good for Emma and Lucas to have both of you. And I know Mommy would be happy that her sister is taking care of us." She hesitated, a flash of vulnerability crossing her face. "But you'll still be my dad, right?" The question squeezed Ethan's heart. "Always," he promised, kneeling to her level. "Nothing will ever change that. The judge is going to make it official today. You're my daughter in every way." Sophia nodded, satisfied. "And we should hurry. Mrs. Winters is helping Emma with her dress, but Lucas keeps trying to put his shoes on the wrong feet." The scene in the living room was controlled chaos as Mrs. Winters and Ms. Pearson helped prepare the younger children for court. Emma twirled in her new blue dress, while Lucas struggled with his clip-on tie, declaring it too tight, despite it barely touching his neck. "Everyone looks very handsome and beautiful," Ethan declared, helping Lucas straighten his tie. "The judge will be very impressed." "Will we have to talk to the judge?" Emma asked, suddenly anxious. "The judge might ask you a few questions," Ethan explained gently. "But Ms. Pearson will be right there with you, and all you need to do is tell the truth about how you feel." Lucas tugged at his collar again. "I feel itchy in these clothes." Despite the tension of the day, Ethan laughed. "Well, maybe don't lead with that, buddy." The family court was less formal than Ethan had expected, designed to be less intimidating for the children involved in its proceedings. Gabriella was already waiting in the hallway, looking elegant but approachable in a navy dress rather than her usual severe suits. "Good morning," she greeted them, kneeling to compliment each child on their appearance. To Ethan's surprise, she had brought small gift bags for each of them. "Just something to keep you occupied while the grown-ups talk to the judge," she explained, as Emma and Lucas eagerly peeked inside to find books and small toys. Judge Eleanor Winters was a dignified woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She welcomed the children warmly before asking Ms. Pearson to take them to a supervised playroom while the adults presented their case. "I understand we have an unusual joint petition before the court today," the judge began once the children were settled elsewhere. "I've reviewed the documents, but I'd like to hear from both of you directly about how you arrived at this arrangement." For the next hour, Ethan and Gabriella explained their journey, from adversaries fighting over custody to partners in creating a stable future for the children. Jonathan and Gabriella's attorney presented the legal framework they had developed, emphasizing how it prioritized the children's needs while respecting biological connections. "Mr. Bradley," Judge Winters said, studying him over her reading glasses, "6 months ago you were a single man with no parenting experience, focused entirely on your business. What convinced you to take on responsibility for 3 young children, only one of whom is biologically yours?" Ethan considered the question carefully. "I could give you a complex answer about moral obligation or social responsibility, Your Honor, but the truth is much simpler. I met these children, saw their courage, their love for each other, their resilience in the face of unimaginable hardship, and something fundamental changed inside me." He paused, searching for the right words. "I discovered that success isn't measured by financial statements or business acquisitions. It's measured by the positive impact we have on the lives around us." The judge nodded thoughtfully, then turned to Gabriella. "And Ms. Martinez, you initially sought exclusive custody of the younger children based on your biological connection as their aunt. What changed your perspective?" Gabriella's composure faltered slightly. "Watching them," she said simply. "Seeing how they've flourished in their current home, recognizing that my sister's children need stability more than they need to satisfy my guilt over not being there when Olivia was ill." She straightened in her chair. And to be perfectly honest, Your Honor, observing Mr. Bradley's dedication to children he had no obligation to care for made me reconsider my assumptions about what makes a family. Judge Winters reviewed her notes silently for several minutes before looking up again. I'd like to speak with the children now, not to put them on the spot, but to ensure their perspective is considered in this decision. Ms. Pearson brought the children into the judge's chambers one by one, starting with Lucas, who charmed the judge with his dinosaur facts and earnest declaration that Mr. Ethan makes the best pancakes and Aunt Gabby tells the funniest stories. Emma followed, shyly explaining how she had her own art room now and how Aunt Gabby was teaching her to make the special cookies that her mommy used to bake. Sophia was last, and her session with the judge lasted considerably longer than her siblings. When she finally emerged, her expression was serious but calm. The judge wants to see both of you now, she told Ethan and Gabriella. In chambers, Judge Winters got straight to the point. I've been a family court judge for 27 years, and I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen opposing parties come together with a solution as thoughtful as this one. She set aside her notes. Sophia is quite remarkable. She spoke eloquently about her responsibility to her siblings and her trust in both of you to keep them together. Ethan felt a surge of pride at these words. She also said something I found particularly insightful, the judge continued. When I asked her how she felt about the arrangement you're proposing, she said, "Families come in all different shapes. Ours just happens to include 2 houses and extra people who love us." From the mouths of babes, indeed. Judge Winters leaned forward, her expression serious. I'm inclined to approve this joint arrangement, but I want to be certain you both understand the commitment you're making. Co-parenting is challenging, even for couples who once loved each other. You two are essentially strangers who have been adversaries. This will require extraordinary communication, compromise, and placing the children's needs above your own at every turn. We understand, Your Honor, Ethan assured her. We've already begun establishing routines and communication protocols that will help us navigate this unique situation. And we're both committed to making this work, Gabriella added. These past weeks of collaboration have shown us that despite our differences, we share common values when it comes to the children's welfare. The judge studied them both for a long moment before nodding decisively. Very well. I'll approve the joint guardianship arrangement as outlined in your petition, with a 6-month review to ensure the arrangement is functioning as intended. She smiled slightly. Though based on my conversation with Sophia, I suspect she'll keep you both in line regardless of court oversight. Relief washed over Ethan so intensely that he nearly missed the judge's final comments about paperwork and follow-up appointments. As they left the chambers, he caught Gabriella's eye and saw his own emotional state reflected there, a mixture of gratitude, triumph, and the weighty responsibility of the path they had chosen. The children were waiting in the hallway with Miss Pearson, their expressions anxious until they saw the adults' faces. Did the judge say yes? Emma asked immediately. Ethan knelt down to their level. Yes, she did. Everything we talked about is going to happen. You'll all stay together at the penthouse, and Aunt Gabby will be an important part of your lives too. And you're officially my dad now? Sophia asked, her voice small but hopeful. Officially and forever, Ethan confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. Sophia launched herself into his arms, followed quickly by Emma and Lucas in a group hug that nearly toppled him backward. Over their heads, he met Gabriella's gaze, noting the tears she was trying to discreetly wipe away. I think this calls for a celebration, she said, composing herself. How about ice cream before lunch? Just this once. The children's cheers echoed through the courthouse hallway as they made their way outside into the bright spring sunshine. As they walked toward a nearby ice cream parlor, Ethan found himself hanging back slightly, watching the children skip ahead with Gabriella and Ms. Pearson. 6 months ago, he had been a hollow shell of a man going through the motions of success without any real purpose or joy. Now he was legally responsible for 3 young lives, co-parenting with a woman who had once been his adversary, rearranging business meetings around school plays and doctor appointments. The transformation was so complete, so unexpected, that sometimes it still left him breathless. Everything okay? Jonathan asked, falling into step beside him as they followed the excited children. Better than okay, Ethan replied, watching Sophia point out something in a store window to her siblings. I was just thinking about how completely my life has changed since that snowy night. Changed for the better, I'd say, Jonathan observed. I haven't seen you this alive since before Sarah's accident. The mention of his late wife brought a pang of bittersweet memory rather than the usual sharp grief. Sarah would have loved them, Ethan said softly. Especially Sophia. They share that same determined spirit. She would have approved of what you've done, Jonathan assured him. Creating a family from unlikely circumstances, finding a way forward that serves everyone's best interests. That was always Sarah's gift too. Seeing the path to harmony where others saw only conflict. Ahead of them, Lucas had climbed onto a bench and was preparing to jump before Gabriella gently intercepted him, redirecting his energy toward a safer game of hopscotch drawn on the sidewalk. Emma was describing something animatedly to Miss Pearson, her hands painting pictures in the air as she spoke. And Sophia, observant, thoughtful Sophia, had paused to wait for Ethan to catch up. "Are you happy, Dad?" she asked simply when he reached her, the new title still unfamiliar but profoundly right. Ethan took her small hand in his, looking at the improbable family they had created from tragedy and chance. Incredibly happy, he told her, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "Me too," she said, squeezing his hand. "Mommy would be happy too, I think. She always said everything happens for a reason, even the hard things." As they joined the others outside the ice cream shop, Ethan reflected on Olivia's wisdom. The hard things, her illness, Sarah's accident, his estrangement from his own child, had indeed led to something unexpected and precious. Not an erasing of the past pain, but a new reality built upon it, like the vibrant sunflowers that had brought them together, turning their faces toward the light. The celebratory mood continued through ice cream and lunch, with even Gabriella relaxing her usual reserve to join in the children's games. By mid-afternoon, however, Lucas was showing signs of overtiredness, and they decided to return to the penthouse for quiet time. "Would you like to join us for dinner tonight?" Ethan asked Gabriella as they waited for his driver. "Nothing formal, just family dinner to mark the occasion." The word family hung between them, new and tentative but undeniably real. After a moment's hesitation, Gabriella nodded. "I'd like that. I need to handle a few work matters first, but I could be there by 6. "Perfect. The children will be thrilled." As they parted ways, Ethan felt a sense of completion that had eluded him for months. The legal battle was resolved, the uncertainty lifted. Now came the real work, the daily practice of building and sustaining this unconventional family they had created. Back at the penthouse, while Lucas napped and the girls engaged in quiet activities, Ethan found himself drawn to the sunflower painting that had started it all. Standing before it, he thought about the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. How a chance encounter on a snowy street had changed not just his life, but the lives of 3 children and even Gabriella's. "Thank you," he whispered to the painting, to Olivia, to whatever cosmic force had placed Sophia in his path that winter night. The gratitude he felt was too vast for words, but it filled his chest with a warmth that had once seemed permanently extinguished. Later that evening, as they gathered around the dining table, Ethan, Gabriella, the 3 children, Mrs. Winters and Miss Pearson, the sense of rightness was palpable. This mismatched group had somehow become a family, bound not by conventional ties but by choice, circumstance and love. Sophia raised her glass of sparkling cider. "To our family," she said, with the solemnity that made her seem far older than her years. "Different but perfect." "To our family," the adults echoed, their glasses meeting over the table. As Ethan looked around at these people who had become the center of his world, he silently added his own toast. To second chances, to unexpected joys, and to the journey ahead, whatever it might bring. Outside the penthouse windows, the New York skyline glittered in the gathering darkness, a fitting backdrop to the celebration of light found in the most unexpected of places. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adjustments to their unconventional arrangement. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. 1 year later, Central Park bloomed in a riot of summer colors. Beneath a sprawling oak tree, a checkered blanket hosted what might have appeared to casual observers as a typical family picnic, albeit one with unusually excellent catering provided by Ethan's personal chef. Lucas, now a boisterous 3-year-old with boundless energy, chased bubbles blown by Miss Pearson across the grass. Emma sat cross-legged beside Gabriella, both of them sketching the boathouse in the distance with matching concentration. And Sophia, recently turned 7 and impossibly more mature than when Ethan had first met her, sat beside him reading a book several grades above her level, occasionally looking up to check on her siblings with the protective instinct that had never quite disappeared despite the security of their new life. "They're fine," Ethan reassured her gently. "You can relax and enjoy your book." Sophia marked her page carefully. "I know. Old habits, I guess." She studied him with those perceptive eyes that always seemed to see straight through to his soul. "Are you excited about tomorrow?" Tomorrow marked the official 1-year anniversary of their unconventional family arrangement, and the day when Emma and Lucas would legally take Ethan's last name, joining Sophia, who had become Sophia Martinez Bradley shortly after the court hearing. The children had chosen this themselves, wanting to honor both their mother's heritage and their new father's family. "Very excited," Ethan confirmed. "Are you still okay with everything we discussed?" She nodded solemnly. "It feels right. We'll still be Mommy's children, but we'll be your children too." She glanced toward where Gabriella was showing Emma a shading technique. "And Aunt Gabby will always be our special connection to Mommy." The arrangement they had created had evolved over the past year into something none of them could have initially imagined. Gabriella had gradually shifted from wary co-guardian to trusted family member. She maintained her own apartment, but spent several days each week at the penthouse, especially when Ethan's occasional business trips required travel. The children moved comfortably between the adults, secure in the knowledge that their unusual family constellation was stable and permanent. Most surprisingly to Ethan had been his own evolution. The driven, emotionally distant businessman had transformed into someone nearly unrecognizable to his former colleagues. A father who scheduled board meetings around school events, who could discuss dinosaur species and princess movies with equal enthusiasm, who measured success not in financial quarters, but in bedtime stories and childhood milestones. "Mr. Ethan, watch me," Lucas called, performing an elaborate spinning move that ended with him tumbling onto the grass, giggling uncontrollably. "Amazing form," Ethan called back, smiling at his youngest. Lucas had only recently stopped calling him Mr. Ethan, despite the legal adoption, unlike the girls who had transitioned to Dad almost immediately after the court hearing. Ethan cherished each dad when it came, but respected Lucas's need to move at his own pace. Gabriella joined them on the blanket, setting aside her sketchbook. "Emma has real talent," she observed. "The art teacher says she's never seen such perspective skills in a 5-year-old. "She gets that from Olivia," Ethan acknowledged, always careful to keep the children's mother present in their conversations. "And from you," Gabriella added with a smile. "Don't think I haven't noticed how you've been teaching her about composition and color theory." Their relationship had evolved too, from adversaries to co-parents to something approaching friendship. They still disagreed occasionally on parenting approaches, but they had developed a mutual respect that made their unusual arrangement work. "The kindergarten art show is next month," Sophia informed them both. "Emma's picture of our family is going to be displayed in the main hallway." "Our rather extensive family," Ethan laughed, thinking of the drawing Emma had proudly shown him, depicting not just the children Ethan and Gabriella but also Mrs. Winters, Ms. Pearson, Jonathan, and even Robert the doorman, all standing together under a bright yellow sun. "Speaking of family," Gabriella said, glancing at her watch, "we should probably start packing up if we're going to make it to the office in time for the final paperwork review with Jonathan." The legal documents that would formalize Emma and Lucas's adoption were waiting for one last review before tomorrow's court appearance. Unlike the tense preparations for their previous court date, this occasion was purely celebratory, the culmination of a year's journey toward creating their unconventional but deeply bonded family. As they gathered their picnic supplies and called the children, Ethan found himself reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. Had he not left his office late that snowy evening? Had he taken his usual route home? Had he ignored the small voice asking him to buy a painting? His life would be unimaginably different. The emptiness that had consumed him after Sarah's passing would likely still be his primary companion, rather than the joyful chaos of 3 young lives intertwined with his own. The sunflower painting that had started it all now held the place of honor in their living room, a daily reminder of both what they had lost and what they had found. Olivia's artistic talent lived on not just in the painting, but in Emma's growing skills and in the stories about their mother that Gabriella shared regularly with the children. "Dad, can we get ice cream on the way to Mr. Jonathan's office?" Emma asked, slipping her small hand into his as they walked toward the park exit. "I think that could be arranged," he replied, exchanging an amused glance with Gabriella over the children's heads. Despite their different parenting styles, they had both learned when to maintain boundaries and when small indulgences were part of creating happy childhood memories. The offices of Bradley Capital Investments had changed along with its founder. Where once stark minimalism and intimidating luxury had prevailed, now children's artwork decorated Ethan's executive suite, and a small play area occupied one corner for days when school holidays necessitated bringing the children to work. His staff had adjusted to the new reality, many of them developing genuine affection for the three children who had humanized their formidable boss. Jonathan welcomed them warmly, having become something of an honorary uncle to the children over the past year. "Everything's ready for review," he informed Ethan and Gabriella, while Ms. Pearson took the children to the break room for ice cream from the company's well-stocked kitchen. The legal documents were straightforward, the final step in making official what had already become their lived reality. Emma and Lucas would legally become Ethan's children, while maintaining their connection to Gabriella as a special guardian, a role they had created specifically to honor her place in their lives. "Once these are filed tomorrow, it's official," Jonathan said, as they signed the last pages. "All three children will have the same legal status as your adopted children, with Gabriella maintaining her specially designated role." "It feels like we've been working toward this forever," Gabriella remarked, signing her name with a flourish. "Hard to believe it's only been a year and a half since that first confrontation in your office, Ethan. When you threatened to take Emma and Lucas away," he recalled with a raised eyebrow. "When I was trying to fulfill what I thought was my responsibility to my sister," she corrected, though her smile acknowledged how far they'd come from that tense beginning. Jonathan gathered the signed documents. "I'll see you all in court tomorrow at 11. Judge Winters specifically requested to preside over this hearing. I think she's quite invested in your family's journey." The children returned with Ms. Pearson, faces predictably smeared with ice cream despite her best efforts with napkins. Lucas immediately climbed into Ethan's lap, while Emma proudly presented Gabriella with a drawing she had made in the break room. "It's all of us at the courthouse tomorrow," she explained, as Gabriella admired the colorful illustration. "See? We're all smiling because we're officially going to be a forever family." "We already are a forever family," Sophia corrected her sister gently. "Tomorrow just makes it official on paper." Ethan caught Gabriella's eye over the children's heads, sharing a moment of appreciation for Sophia's wisdom. She had been their compass throughout this journey, her unwavering determination to keep her siblings together, having guided all the adults toward the solution that now seemed so obviously right. Later that evening, after Gabriella had left for her apartment with plans to join them early the next morning, Ethan found himself drawn to the nursery that had become the children's bedrooms. Lucas was already asleep, clutching the dinosaur plushie that had been his constant companion since their first night in the penthouse. Emma was drowsy, listening to Mrs. Winters read one last story. He found Sophia in her room, sitting on the window seat that overlooked the glittering city, her mother's journal open in her lap. She looked up as he entered, her expression thoughtful. "I was reading what Mommy wrote about you," she said, making room for him to sit beside her. "From before I was born." Ethan felt a familiar pang of regret for the years he had missed, the relationship with Olivia he had discarded in pursuit of success. "What did she say?" "That you were brilliant but scared of letting people get too close. That you built walls around yourself because you were afraid of being hurt." Sophia looked up at him, with those eyes that seemed to contain wisdom far beyond her years. "She said someday you might learn that real strength comes from being vulnerable, not from being invulnerable." The insight struck Ethan deeply, both Olivia's perception of the man he had been and how profoundly he had changed since these children had crashed into his carefully controlled life. "Your mother was very wise," he said softly. "She also wrote that she forgave you," Sophia added, turning a page in the journal. "She said everyone makes mistakes, and that holding on to anger only hurts yourself." Ethan swallowed against the sudden tightness in his throat. "I wish I had known about you from the beginning. I wish I could have been there for all the moments I missed." Sophia closed the journal carefully. But then maybe you wouldn't have met Sarah, and she was important too. And maybe you wouldn't have been ready to be our dad. She leaned against his side. Mommy always said everything happens when it's supposed to, even if we don't understand the timing. Ethan put his arm around his daughter, marveling at her emotional intelligence and capacity for understanding. How did you get so wise, Sophia Martinez Bradley? She shrugged, a rare childlike gesture from this old soul in a young body. I had to grow up fast, but now I can just be a kid sometimes, because I have you and Aunt Gabby to be the grown-ups. The simple statement encompassed everything they had been working toward, creating a safe space where these children who had endured so much could reclaim some of the childhood they deserved. That's exactly right, he assured her. Tomorrow and every day after, that's our job, to be the grown-ups so you can be kids. And our job is to remember that families can look different but still be perfect, she said, repeating what had become something of a family motto. As he tucked her into bed a few minutes later, Ethan felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. The journey to this moment had been filled with unexpected turns, grief and loss, chance encounters, legal battles, and ultimately compromise and connection. Tomorrow would make official what his heart already knew. These three remarkable children were his, and he was theirs, bound by something far stronger than biology or legal documents. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect summer day for their court appearance. The children were dressed in their finest clothes, excitement making them even more animated than usual. Mrs. Winters had prepared a special breakfast, and even Miss Pearson had arrived early to help with preparations, bringing small gifts for each child to mark the occasion. Gabriella arrived precisely at 9, elegant in a sundress rather than her usual business attire, carrying a beautifully wrapped package. "Something for all of you," she explained, setting it on the dining table. For after the hearing, the courthouse had a festive air rather than the tension of their previous visit. Judge Winters welcomed them warmly, her affection for this unusual family evident in her smile as she called the children forward. "I understand you've all agreed to a very special arrangement," she said, looking between Ethan, Gabriella, and the children. "One that keeps you together while honoring all the important relationships in your lives." "Yes, Your Honor," Sophia answered for all of them. "We're going to be the Martinez Bradley family, with Dad as our father and Aunt Gabby as our special guardian." "And everyone's in agreement with this arrangement?" the judge asked, looking specifically at Emma and Lucas. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "We get to be a family forever, and Aunt Gabby will always be part of our family too. And we'll always remember our mommy." Lucas, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "And I get to call Mr. Ethan Dad now, for real." Ethan felt his heart constrict at the simple statement. It was the first time Lucas had used the word, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Judge Winters smiled at the little boy. "That's right, Lucas. So after today, he'll officially be your dad." She looked at the legal documents before her. "Everything appears to be in order. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I hereby approve the adoption of Emma Martinez Bradley and Lucas Martinez Bradley by Ethan Bradley, with the special guardianship provision for Gabriella Martinez, as outlined in these documents." She signed the papers with a flourish, then stood to address the children directly. "In my many years as a judge, I've seen all kinds of families. The most successful ones aren't defined by who is biologically related to whom, but by the love and commitment they show to each other every day." She smiled at all of them. "I have a feeling your family will be very successful indeed." Outside the courthouse in the bright summer sunshine, they gathered for photographs, the three children in the center, Ethan and Gabriella on either side, with Mrs. Winters and Ms. Pearson included in several shots. An observer might have been puzzled by this unconventional grouping, but to anyone who knew their story, the joy on their faces told everything that mattered. Back at the penthouse, they opened Gabriella's gift, a beautiful family album she had created, beginning with photos of Olivia with each child, continuing through their year together, with several empty pages at the end labeled "Our Future Adventures." "So we can keep adding to our story," she explained as the children paged through the album with wonder and delight. Later, as they enjoyed the celebration lunch Mrs. Winters had prepared, Ethan found a moment to step onto the terrace alone, taking in the view of the city that had once been his primary focus. So much had changed in 18 months. His priorities, his daily routines, his understanding of what constituted success and fulfillment. Sophia joined him, slipping her hand into his with the easy affection that still sometimes caught him by surprise. "Are you happy, Dad?" she asked, an echo of the question she had posed after their first court hearing a year ago. Ethan looked back through the windows at the scene inside, Lucas showing Gabriella his newest dinosaur fact book, Emma helping Mrs. Winters arrange cookies on a platter, Ms. Pearson laughing at something Jonathan had said. The penthouse that had once been a monument to his success was now simply home, a place of warmth, occasional chaos, and boundless love. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," he told his daughter truthfully. "How about you?" Sophia considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness, watching her siblings through the window. "I used to be scared all the time," she admitted. "Scared we wouldn't have enough food, scared someone would separate us, scared I wasn't taking good enough care of Emma and Lucas." She turned those wise eyes up to his face. "I'm not scared anymore. Now I just get to be a kid who happens to have the best family ever, even if it's not the kind of family other kids have." "The best kinds of families are the ones we create together," Ethan said, echoing words Gabriella had shared during their celebration dinner the night before. Sophia nodded solemnly. Like sunflowers all turning toward the light. The reference to Olivia's painting, the catalyst that had brought them together, wasn't lost on Ethan. Like those resilient flowers, they had all found their way through darkness, toward something bright and life-giving. "Exactly like that," he agreed, putting an arm around her shoulders as they turned to rejoin their family inside, the family none of them had expected, but that had become, through chance and choice and love, exactly the family they all needed. The sunflower painting watched over their celebration from its place of honor. Olivia's artistic vision, a constant reminder of both what they had lost and what they had found. In its vibrant colors and upturned blooms, Ethan saw the perfect metaphor for their journey. Separate stems united in their reach toward light, connected by unseen roots far stronger than surface appearances might suggest. Different but perfect, just as Sophia had said. A family created not from conventional beginnings, but from the shared determination to turn toward the light, whatever shadows might have come before. As Lucas called for him to help with a stubborn toy package, and Emma waved him over to see her newest drawing, Ethan Bradley, once defined solely by his business success, now known primarily as dad to 3 remarkable children, smiled at the beautiful chaos of the life he had never expected, but would never again wish to be without. Film de Historia. Dear listeners, we hope that Ethan and Sophia's journey from strangers to family has touched your heart. For more emotionally captivating stories like this one, we've prepared a special playlist that explores the complexities of unconventional families and second chances. Find it by clicking on the link to your left. If this story moved you, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique narratives that explore life's challenges and triumphs. Join our community in the comment section below. We'd love to hear which moment in the Martinez-Bradley family's journey resonated with you most. Until our next story, remember that families come in all shapes and sizes, each one perfect in its own way.